Washington, D.C. Career Infusion is brought to you through the Lofty Group, a consulting company consisting of subject matter experts who focus on career and organizational development strategies and presentations as well. This particular segment of Career Infusion, really like all of our segments, is designed to equip you with the skill set needed to be successful in your career. We want you to find your passion and we want to empower you with the knowledge and skill set necessary to be successful during your professional endeavors. I am very, very delighted to introduce our guest for today, Kathleen Moore. Kathleen has more than 30 years of experience in marketing, public relations, and communications in the government, trade, association, and small business arena. She is the CEO and Chief Creative Mind of Bruton Moss LLC, which is a strategic marketing firm based in Largo. If you could change to our slide real quickly. Kathleen has international communications experience. It should be the ad slide. Kathleen has international communications experience, having worked in Botswana, Venezuela, Cuba, and Mexico. A native of Savannah, Georgia, she has a Bachelor of Arts from Cleveland University in Ohio and completed graduate studies from the Johns Hopkins School of Advanced International Studies in Washington, D.C. Welcome, Kathleen.
Good afternoon, Tracy. Thank you so much for the invitation, and I am very pleased to be here with you and your listeners today, this afternoon. I think your topic of going from employee to entrepreneur is an excellent topic. It is one, as you know, there are thousands and thousands of new businesses started every day, and many folk don't have the insight that they should have in terms of launching their new endeavors. So it's a great opportunity to share what I know about beginning a business. I've been in business now for 10 years, and it is quite an undertaking. It is quite rewarding, but it is challenging as well. And so having some insight on some pitfalls to avoid, having insight on how to position yourself in the marketplace, and particularly how to determine if you're ready to be a business owner, because that's really the first step.
That is the first step. And so Career Infusion really wanted to bring you this presentation focusing on going from an employee to an entrepreneur because it is so timely. We have a lot of people right now who are interested in starting their own businesses. And most very interestingly, I know last week I had several of my friends who were telling me that they were interested in starting their business, and others have actually just recently started a business. So Kathleen, can you give our listeners an idea of what it really takes to prepare to start a business?
Well, it takes a lot. And of course, our whole mission with Bruton Moss is to really focus on strategy. And so whenever I talk to clients or potential clients about their business endeavors, I always encourage them to focus on strategy. And so what we're going to talk about today is, quite frankly, in that vein. We're going to start with talking about, well, can I afford to start a business? That's really the question that you need to ask yourself. Can I afford to start a business? And there are some hard questions that you should ask yourself when you analyze this whole endeavor. We can go to the next slide, please. First thing I would do was I always encourage folk to really think about this is a leap of faith that you're taking. And before you take that leap of faith, you really want to ask yourself some hard questions, particularly in terms of financial preparedness. Do you have the ability financially to manage and keep yourself going while you build your business? Next slide, please. And that's really the key, because anyone knows that when you're starting your business, you're not going to start out the gate making millions of dollars. So you have to understand and know, how am I going to sustain myself? If you are, if you have a family, how am I going to sustain my family? So these are some of the hard questions that you're going to have to ask. The first thing I tell folks is, ask yourself, how can I continue to generate income as I begin to build my business? As I said before, you may not be able to start generating income with your business right away. So what's your plan? Because you still have a mortgage, and if you're married with a family, you still have children. You still have college tuitions or private school tuitions. You still have to maintain yourself and your family. So think through how you're going to do that.
So you may not want to start out full-time right away. It may be that you really need to build up your clientele and continue to have your full-time job, and possibly do your new business on a part-time type of basis.
And again, you're thinking strategically, and that is definitely a good strategy to take. One of the things that I always encourage folk is, a lot of times people say, well, I have savings, I have investment, I have my retirement. My recommendation is that you do not touch that. You hold off on touching any of your savings as long as you can, because you're going to need that cushion. If we can go to the next slide, please. And I know that we have romanticized this whole idea of being an entrepreneur. And it is very fascinating, it's very nice, but you really need to think very smart, be smart about it. So as I mentioned, these are some of the important questions that you have to ask. If you have a family, keep in mind, okay, are there any major milestones that my family is going to go through in the next 3 to 5 years? Because starting a company, if you can last 3 to 5 years, you've really, you've done very well. You've done better than most. But in that time period, do you have kids that are in college or going to college? If you're married, are you and your spouse thinking about having a child? These are expenses. And you have to think about, how are we going to manage this? Because life goes on. And that is one of the key things to remember. Your life doesn't stop because you started a business.
Right. And I actually launched my business while my son was in college. And so he's a freshman now in college, but I did most of the developmental work while he was finishing high school, but I held off on launching it just because I knew that it was going to be a huge commitment, and I wasn't prepared when he was going through the whole thing of looking for colleges to attend. I wasn't prepared to launch it then, so I held off until I was much more prepared to do so.
Exactly. And let's take a look at the next slide, because we're going to ask a couple of other important questions. You mentioned earlier, Tracy, what about maintaining my job while I start my business? And that is definitely a good strategy. It's a good way of getting your business launched. What you should think about, though, is, how is this going to impact my family life? Because you're going to be working around the clock. So you have to think about, and I'm not saying it's a bad idea, it is a very feasible idea, but just make your family understand what this is going to mean about your family life. How is it going to impact your job performance, which is very key? How does it impact your family life? And how is it going to impact your own mental and physical well-being, which is key? If you cannot maintain, if working your own job, your own business and your job takes so much out of you that you're not maintaining your health, then you may want to rethink how you go about this. Because if you don't have good health, then there's no way you're going to be able to build a healthy company. Next slide. We also want to be very clear about your financial considerations. And I always tell folk to be prepared for financial hard times, because it is very hard to grow a business and maintain the lifestyle that you probably had when you had your full-time job. I was kind of thrown into the entrepreneurship pool, and so for me, I didn't plan it. So I'm talking. These are lessons learned that I'm sharing. But things happen where you have a job for a number of years. I was making six figures, and because of economic considerations with my employer, my position was terminated. Well, it was good for me though that my employer kept me on on retainer for another year, almost another year. So that helped me to actually build my own clientele, build my business, the business model, and put everything in play. So you want to be clear to think about your own financial house. So, and that goes to a number of key points, like making sure before you quit your job or leave your job, make sure that your credit is in perfect condition. Make sure that, when we ask the question, how am I going to maintain myself or my family without a job? Well, the bottom line is you should have at least a year's salary saved up. And folk don't, when people hear that, they think, oh, really? Yeah, you really. And I'm not talking about your 401k. I'm not talking about your retirement. Retirement funds are meant for retirement. And as long as you can stay away from touching those funds, the better. So, in actuality, you should look at saving 6 to 12 months of your salary, your annual
And a
salary.
lot of people have had to go back to work to maintain their lifestyle because they weren't prepared financially to start a business. And you're correct that if you're going to do this full time, you really do want to have 6 months to a year's worth salary to start out. I actually started out part time, but you mentioned about having your own finances straight. You will need to more than likely have some type of line of credit for your business. You'll want to have a banking account for a checking account for your business. So all of that is necessary to launch.
Exactly. And actually, we can go to the next slide as well. You want to be sure, because when you think about starting a company, as you mentioned, you want to make sure that you have your startup funds. You want to make sure you have funds available to brand and market your company. We're going to talk about branding and taking your business to market in the next half of the show. But that takes money, and you should budget for that. And I have a colleague of mine who often says, a plan without a budget ain't worth a hill of beans. So it doesn't make any sense to have a wonderful business plan if you haven't budgeted the revenue or the funding that you need to execute it. So that's very important. Okay. Also, you want to be very upfront and honest with your family about how life may change, because mommy or daddy or both now have a business. And so that's very important. You have to make them understand that we're going to cut our spending. Okay, we're launching our business. We are looking at the long term of our family's economic status. So we want to make sure that we can do this. We can fund it. So you want to be very clear that your family is on board. If you're married, your husband has to be on board with what you're doing, or your wife has to be on board with what you're doing, and you should plan this endeavor together, so that everyone's on the same page about what sacrifices are going to have to be made in order for this to be a success.
When I was exploring the whole idea of launching a business, I was talking to other friends of mine who were consultants, and I was told that the stream of revenue is not always steady. And so that's one of the reasons you definitely want to be prepared. So there may be a time that you have, there may be months where you have many clients, and there may be other months where you don't have any clients whatsoever. So you need to budget accordingly.
Exactly. And Tracy, you and I had this conversation recently. One of the things I tell people all the time is that, being an entrepreneur takes three parts of your body. It takes
Yes.
your head, your heart, and your stomach. You've got to have all three. You have to have you have to be smart about what you're doing. You have to be all in with your heart, and entrepreneurs usually are. They are very passionate about what they want to do. But you have to have the gut for it. It has to be something you can stomach, because when you get to a point where you're not, as you mentioned, you're not going to get a check every 2 weeks. If you're used to having a full-time job, you may not, you're not going to get a check every 2 weeks or every month. So you got to have the stomach to hang in there, and that takes a lot of dedication, and again, it takes being prepared.
Right. And you really have to give 200% to this endeavor. So there may be times that you're sending emails out 11 o'clock at night, at midnight, or you may be returning phone calls really late, leaving messages. Just be prepared to give 200%. This isn't one of those things where you can just leave at 5 o'clock and it's over. If you own your own business, this is really 24/7 that you have to be committed.
Absolutely. The most on this segment of the show, the key here is focusing on your finances, as we've already talked about, and I'll go back to some of the previous ideas that I put forth. Be frugal, of course. You're going to have to save your money. You're really going to have to start budgeting. And it's important that you start budgeting now and you get your family engaged and on board with this. You want to make sure, as I mentioned before, that your credit is in good shape. If not, this is the time to start building and rebuilding your credit. Many times I have people say, well, I have access to my house. I own a home. I have real estate investments. I could pull cash out. Again, I would highly you recommend that you not do that. I think your plan should not be based on your leveraging your living arrangements, your property, because businesses grow and businesses fail. And so you do not want to put your personal and your family's personal living conditions in jeopardy. So, but you want to there are many other things you can do. Pay off your bills, so that gives you more cash flow. Make sure that you are getting out of high interest credit cards, so that you can benefit from lower interest cards. Make a huge difference. I was talking to a banker once about how do you build savings and financial education for young people and for adults. And one of the comments he made was, people are often thinking about saving, which is great, but he says the easiest thing to do to save money is to pay off your bills. Right away, you are opening up revenue streams of cash or ongoing, revenue that you can save. So the first thing you should focus on, saving money means cutting your bills, paying off bills, and getting out of high interest loans and things like that. Did you have any questions or anything about that?
Next slide.
Let's go to the next slide. Very good. Now, how do you fund your business? How do you fund your business? And that's always a big question. Again, having a business plan is key. A lot of folk want to, always recommend getting a small business loan. If you are new, if you are starting a business for the first time, getting a small business loan is going to be quite an uphill battle, because you are, and a lot of folk talk about SBA tools and SBA resources, and there are great resources out there, but at the end of the day, those resources go, quite frankly, mostly to companies that have a track record that's been in business for a while, because you're a risk. You're a very you're a very strong risk for any financial institution, even if it's backed by a government program. So don't automatically feel that you can just go out and get a loan, because the odds are very slim that you will be approved for one. So having said that, what do you do? Well, you go back to what we talked about earlier. You go back to looking at non-conventional ways or unconventional ways to endeavor, to get your endeavor launched. And that could be getting investors. It could be looking to family and friends for investment, depending on the type of business that you're in. And one of the key things I would say is really look at the startup costs of your business before you launch, and do your research. Oh, I can't tell you how important it is to really do very strong, very intense, comprehensive research, so that you understand the cost of not just launching it, but of executing your business model, of really running it for, up to 3 years. Because if you can get those first 3 years covered, then you have greater chance of surviving.
So starting out, you may not actually have full-time staff. You may not have anyone to assist you. You may have to be the sole leader of this initiative. But as you have more revenue, then you can say, okay, well, I can now afford to have an employee on staff or employees on staff. But just be prepared to juggle multiple roles in the very beginning.
Absolutely, absolutely. And quite frankly, hiring staff comes, again, it depends. Now, if you're Donald Trump and you have a father who can give you $1 million, then you're ahead of the game. You're totally ahead of the game. But if you're not, you're going to have to do the work. Quite frankly, you're going to have to do the work. You're going to have to be the CEO. You're going to have to be the marketing person. You're going to have to be the receptionist who answers the phone. You're going to have to carry all of the roles, or several of the roles. If you have family members that can work with you, that's fabulous. But quite frankly, when you're starting out, you want not to have paid staff unless you have a nice pot of revenue to work with, because you want to be able to sustain yourself over time, and you want to be able to put money back in the company for equipment, for resources that you need in order to enhance your product or service that you're offering to the marketplace. So you want to think very clearly about when is the best time to hire someone. And also look at interns. If you have a very a strong business model and an intriguing business plan that you're putting into place, you may be able to find some very skilled and ambitious interns who can help you in, getting things off the ground.
Right. And as this slide shows, perseverance is key.
Oh, yeah. It is, as I mentioned before, this is not for entrepreneurship. Is not for the faint of heart. You have to really have the gut for it. One of my clients said to me, if it were easy, everyone would be doing it. So that's a very good point that he made. So you have to be ready for the pitfalls, and to pick yourself back up, and but learn from all of your mistakes and keep moving. Just move to that next step. I've been in the game for 10 years, and it's been an up and down road, but I'm very happy with the progress that I'm making, and I'm very happy with the value that I provide to my clients. And that's, at the end of the day, whatever your mission is, you're going to find extreme reward, and just being able to help your clientele achieve what it is that they need to achieve, or be able to solve their problems. And at the end of the day, that's what it's all about.
And I have known Kathleen for many years now, and I can recall when her business idea, it was just an idea. It was just a concept. And to now see her business flourishing, and she has staff and an office, and it's full time. And I am just really thrilled and glad that she could be a part of our show today. So the second half of our show will focus on the marketing aspect of it. And we are going to take about a 2-minute break, and we will be right back. Welcome back. The second half of our show focuses on bringing your business to market. And again, we are joined by the amazing and talented Kathleen Moore, CEO and Chief Creative Mind of Bruton Moss LLC.
Great, thank you so much. Well, when we talk about bringing your business to market, it entails a lot, and it is very important that you focus on, you have a strategy, and that you stage your launch very, very carefully. Let's look at that first slide before we get into staging the launch. I'd like to just bring our audience up to speed on the three I would say phases of business growth. You have your startup phase, and that's when as we talked about, you're establishing your customer base, you're developing your visibility as a new business or new company in the market, and you're building your track record. Okay, the next phase is where you're more established now. Perhaps you've been in business for 3 to 5 years now. So you're beginning to leverage your business relationships because you're preparing yourself to graduate to the next level. This is where you're expanding your customer base, and you are beginning to look at how to better align your products and services in the marketplace. And it's very important to keep in mind that the marketplace is very dynamic. It's always changing, and your customer base changes as well in terms of their needs and their wants. So you want to make sure that you stay in tune with what's going on in the market, and so that you can adjust and realign your business as necessary. And of course, there's a growth phase, and this is businesses that's been in existence for 5 to 10 years, and in these cases, again, they're kind of reassessing their business operations. They're taking it to a new level. Many times I have customers that have been in business for 10, 8, 9, 10 years, and they come to me because they want to rebrand. They're kind of rethinking things in terms of their products and services. They're looking at getting into new markets, looking at new demographics, new customer bases in order to grow. And it's very important to understand that your business is a living thing, quite frankly. It is always, it's about growth. And growth means change. Growth means looking at where you are and reassessing and realigning yourself so that you can continue to be competitive. So those are the three basic growth phases. We're going to focus on the startup for this audience.
And most people have not taken a business course. So I'm really glad that you are educating our viewers on this with the 3 different phases. So like I said, most of our viewers haven't, or listeners haven't taken a business course, but there will be phases that you go through. So thank you for sharing that slide with us.
You're welcome. The next slide, we're going to focus on the startup phase. And it is at this point where you are going to really define your corporate brand. And one of the things, when I talk about brand, many times folk right away they think about their logo. And that's great. I mean, and that's as part of your brand. But that's it's the graphical representation, if you will, the symbol associated with your company, which is very important. But you also need to think about your differential, your value proposition. That's a big part of your brand. What makes you different? What makes you better? Why should someone buy from you as opposed to your competitor? That is the core of a strong brand.
That would be the brand statement.
That is your brand statement, exactly. And what I like to call your brand promise, because in essence, what are you promising your target audience? What is it? And the key to understanding that is, what is it that your target audience needs, and which goes back to our whole discussion of knowing the marketplace. In order for you to solve someone's problem, you have to first understand what their problem is. So that being the case, study your demographic, study your target audience, because you need to understand them better than you understand yourself, quite frankly, because you have to speak to their needs.
Right.
So it's very important when we talk about brand to understand what you stand for, what makes you different
Right. It
than
needs
others.
to be. It needs to be unique. And I always, a lot of times when I give examples of ice cream. So it's not that your company is just offering. Let's give the example of vanilla ice cream. What would be unique about that vanilla ice cream, or what would be the unique about the service your company provides?
Exactly. One of the things I hear a lot when I talk to new business owners, when they talk about the differential, they'll talk about their years of experience. Well, I've been doing this for 30 years, or, I come out of this government agency, and which is great, but that doesn't make you any different than a lot of other folk.
Right.
Your differential really has to be based on what is it that you're offering that other folk are not, or what angle are you taking that your competitors are not taking that angle. What is it that you are bringing to, and it could be in terms of software intelligence, it could be in terms of something physical that you're bringing to the table, in terms of patents or trademarks, or anything that is unique, and your approach. I have a client that's done a great job in creating processes. They do program management, project management. They're a government contractor, and there are a lot of folk doing program and project management, but they have been very, very shrewd, quite frankly, to build methodologies around their around their services.
Right.
So they've actually documented their processes, and they can show how their processes bring about a better result for their client.
Right. So this slide pretty much covers a lot of what you've already mentioned with what's in a brand.
Exactly.
So
exactly.
let's go to the next slide.
This I like Nike a lot. I like Nike, and that's why I wanted to highlight this particular brand. As you can see, Nike has gone through years of, and they've stayed in touch with the marketplace and with their particular client. A few things to say about your logo is, number one, you want your logo to be very. It should be unique, but it should stand out. It should not be too busy. I've seen logos where folk are trying to put too many aspects, too many different things in terms of symbols in a logo. You're only going to confuse your audience. Make it simple, make it unique, and make it bold. Make it so that and give it a story, if you will. There's a story. If you ever do have time to research some of the major brand logos, you will find that most of them have a story behind them. There's a reason that Nike's using the swoosh, and Nike is actually goes back to Greek mythology. For those who may not know, it was used among the warriors, and when they used Nike, they meant that they were going to be successful in war, and so that has a very strong, I would say, meaning behind it in terms of being victorious
And I think
in competition.
I think the tagline goes well with the solo swoosh as well, of just do it.
Exactly, and it goes back to the culture and the emotion that Nike is wants you to relate to. Just do it. It's very emotional, and it's to encourage their audience to go out and accomplish whatever it is you set out to accomplish.
Right.
It's a
So-
very bold, very strong brand. In terms of your corporate identity, I just have here just in terms of your basic collateral, what you need to have to get started. You want to have your letterhead, of course, your sales brochure, your business cards. Everything is all about e-marketing these days, so you want to be sure that you have a very strong strategic website. You want to make sure that your content is very well put together, speaks to your audience. That's very key. That you don't just tell folk what you do, you tell folk what you can do for them. That is the key to your content. And as we say in marketing, content is king. You want to be sure that you have a very strong social media presence and an active social media presence. And also you want to be sure that your collateral has been well put together and is very professional.
And the good thing with social media is that so much of that you can do now yourself without paying anything, taking anything out of your checking account or anything like that. So, you want to take advantage of the different social media platforms. I won't name those specifically, but just take advantage of what currently exists. So we're going to move on to the next slide.
And we'll close just a little bit about talking about marketing strategies. At the end of the day, the thing you need to do, particularly when you're starting out, you don't have a big marketing budget, so you should look at creative ways to get your brand out there. And one of the things I love most, and we do it all the time in our company, is we host events. We host educational events targeting our audience, targeting the companies that we service. And it's a great way, number one, to get to know your clientele or your potential clientele. So using social media, as we talked about, and leveraging that, and all of the platforms have very creative ways that you can do outreach and sponsor your postings and things like that.
And I really like the special events. I've been invited to quite a few special events where it may be a luncheon or a reception that's hosted by a company, and that is for them to bring out potential clients. And not only do you get to talk with the owners or the representatives of that particular company, but you also get to network with other potential clientele, those that are pretty much similar to you. So it's a great networking opportunity.
It is, and it makes, and what this does for you as a company, it makes you the convener, quite frankly. It also puts you in a position where you're becoming a thought leader. My recommendation, and we do events, but we do our events centered on topics that are of concern to our particular audience. You think about the banking industry. Banks often have workshops on home ownership.
Right, that's right.
You see, or they have workshops on financial literacy and things like that, because they want folk to come to their bank to take out a mortgage or apply for a mortgage loan. They want folk to come to their bank to open up an account. So these things and they're free, and they make them available for their target audience because it brings in customers.
Yes, so just think out of the box. You want to offer something that's unique and something that's going to get a great return on the investment. So let's go to the next slide.
I think we'll talk a little bit, and not much because I know we're running out of time, but we can talk a little bit about getting noticed. And we've already talked about, showcasing your expertise with events and things like that, becoming the knowledge, the resource of knowledge for your target audience, business networking. Word of mouth, of course, is the best way to gain and build your clientele, and that comes from doing great work. Quite frankly, when I started out, I did not advertise hardly at all. I didn't have time to really because I got a steady flow. I continue to get a steady flow of clients that were all referrals. My business, quite frankly, has been based and built on referrals. So you want to make sure that when you do work, your work is done in a magnificent manner, and that all of your clients are very pleased with your products and your services. You want to make sure, though, that you have your marketing tools should be well put together, very professional, and that they should be educational pieces as well.
Okay. Well, Kathleen, thank you so much for being on our show. Here you have the information for Kathleen's contact, all of her contact information. Again, she is the Chief Creative Mind with Bruton Moss, and her email address is kmore@brutonmoss.com. The phone number here in the United States, 240-487-6695. We are going to take about a 2-minute break and come back with just a few key points. Thank you. Thank you for watching Career Infusion. I hope that today you have really learned about how to launch a business and how to market your business. Again, Career Infusion really focuses on helping you to find your passion and empowering you to pursue your professional goals. Now, today's show was presented by Kathleen Moore. Again, she's the CEO and Chief Creative Mind for Bruton Moss. And just a few key points that she did mention. Really, you want to think it through when you're considering launching a business. Think of every possibility, particularly financially, because right away you are not going to see a lot of revenue streams. There's a lot of money that you have to put into starting a business. And you may decide that you want to start part-time before you launch full-time. So that would mean that you are still working your full-time job if you have a full-time job while also launching your business. So be prepared to work long hours. This is a 24/7 initiative when you are running your business. And then Kathleen also pointed out that perseverance is key. So there will be times that it is very challenging to continue with your business. There may be times when, let's say in 1 month, you have 10 clients, and there could be 2 or 3 months where you don't have any clients. But again, just persevere. And this is something that you must be passionate about. You have to own it. You have to make it happen if it's to be successful. Now, Career Infusion is brought to you through the Lofty Group. We offer strategic planning workshops for your career and for organizational leadership. If you're interested in having someone from the Lofty Group, such as myself or another subject matter expert, to come to your business or to your conference to serve as a speaker, you may contact us at theloftygroup.com. This concludes today's program. Thank you, and stay tuned for our presentation next week.